welcome once again to EWTN's Bookmark. Our very special guest is Dion DiMucci, author of The Wanderer Talks Truth, Stories, Humor, and Music, published by Servant Books, along with Mike Aquilina. He wrote this book. Great. Dion is the way everybody knows you. Great to have you here. Happy you were able to wander into our studio here and be with us today. Dion, The Wanderer Talks Truth. One of the things I wanted to ask you from reading the book is, you say the song The Wanderer is not about you, but then you reference yourself as the wanderer. What's the connection and what's not the connection?
We're all wanderers in a sense. We're all looking for home, whether we know it or not. You know, home is more than a house. You know, community, and because everything works itself, life works itself out in relationships, and we're all looking to be home. You know, so in that sense, I'm the wanderer. But the Wanderer was written about a real character. When I started writing, I felt I had the gift to write a song. There were guys and girls in my neighborhood that were bigger than life. And The Wanderer was written about a guy named Jackie Burns, who was a little ahead of his time. He had the tank top and the tattoos, Rosie on, you know, he had like, what is it? Flo on my left arm, Mary on my right, Janie is the girl that I'll be with tonight. When they ask, I tear open my shirt, I show a Rosie on my chest. And then every time he'd break off with a girl, he'd have the tattoo covered up with a leopard or he was a character. He was worth the song. But you know, it's funny that you asked me about that song. Bruce Springsteen really got it.
You was talking about that in the book, in fact.
Yeah, it turns in on itself. I roam from town to town. I go through life without a care. I'm as happy as a clown with my 2 fists of iron, but I'm going nowhere. So the song really kind of tells on itself, and it's the guy has a little question in his mind. There's a little light there.
Well, you got to say it's a darker song than a lot of people take it as.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. But
was it a dark time for you at the time when you put that song together?
Who knew what? You know, I was barreling my way through life, trying to make sense of it. You know, I don't know if I would define it that way, but it was confusing. You know, a little confusion.
Right. Now, also, just to stay on the song thing, now your poor wife, whose name happens to be Sue, but apparently has nothing to do with Runaround Sue, I guess, which was good for you, that she wasn't Runaround Sue, but she had to deal with that. You say in the book, was it 1961 or whatever year it was, every time she got introduced as Runaround Sue, but it's not her, right?
I call her Susie, but the name was so easy to rhyme, and it was a 1 syllable, a rock and roll name. You know, it just rhymed with everything. So the song just worked like that. You know.
Now the foreword, I thought this was interesting. I pick up this book about Dion, talking about. I know he's talking about his faith in here, his story, as well, and it opens up. And of course, I'm from Long Island, so I see cold wings of Long Island blew in from the ocean in 1958, and I notice Lou Reed writing the foreword, and he talks about, and then there was Dion, that great opening to I Wonder Why, engraved in my skull forever. Dion, whose voice was unlike any other I had heard before. And it just kind of struck me as kind of highly unusual to have someone like a Lou Reed writing the foreword, but this is actually an introduction he gave you when you were initiated into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right. Yeah, he, a good friend, a great writer, you know, right off a street poet. And he always said, Dion, you're Bronx soul. Right. You're the heart and Bronx soul music. So we get along well, go out for dinner now and then, but he's, you know, 2 guitars, bass and drums, garage band. And what's there not to like about that?
Well, he also said, he talks about you having the chops, and he practically invented the attitude. What is the attitude? You talk about it elsewhere in the book as well.
You know, hey, it's like, for me, my music is black music filtered through an Italian Bronx neighborhood. It comes out with an attitude. Yo, the kid is here. You know, it's like, it comes out just with this attitude, and it's street music, and it's street poetry, you know. So
Was that always how you felt about yourself, or was that a reaction to your childhood? Because I know it was. You talk very lovingly about your mom. You talk about your relationship with your dad being a little more strained, right?
You know, I had an attitude. I was really a troubled kid. I was a delinquent. You know, I got kicked out of like 7 high schools. You know, but if you would, you know, if I had to define that now or analyze it now, I really wasn't like that inside. I was just, I don't know, I was angry. But
did you put that on to protect yourself?
Yeah,
was that like a facade and everything?
Yeah, you had to do that in my neighborhood. Like, you know,
like
when
joining gangs and stuff.
Yeah,
like
when
that.
you're born in the Bronx and you walk down the street, for some reason, Doug, I don't know where I got this idea, but I thought you had to be born knowing everything. Mm-hmm. So you walk around like, hey, what do you want to know? The kid is here. You know, and I didn't know much, you know.
Well, in the introduction here, you talk about the fact of that there's a certain kind of attention deficit that goes with the business of rock and roll, and you talk about the idea of 3 minutes and 5 seconds, and the idea that you have to tell a story as quickly as possible. How does that relate to this book as well?
Well, you know, I always looked at songs, you know. I became a Hank Williams fan.
That was a real surprise.
Yeah, I heard him sing Honky Tonk Blues, you know, and when I was about 10 years old, and I never forgot it. Doug, it come out of the radio like, what is that? First of all, I didn't know what honky tonk was. I'm talking about.
Neither did all you, the kids on the block, right?
Jambalaya, and
right.
I had no idea what it was. You know, sausage bread, I knew what it was. You know, you know, so, you know, I fell in love with Hank Williams, started collecting his records, and I found at a very early age, you know, my parents argued a lot. Mm-hmm. And the more they argued, I'd put myself in my room. I had a guitar. My uncle got me, my mother and my uncle bought me a guitar from a pawn shop. I'd lock and the more they'd argue, the better I'd get on the guitar. You know, I'd just go in and
Was that
play.
your way of escaping in a way?
Yeah. And then I found out that with a song, a 3-minute song, I could resolve conflict. You know, I could go out on the stoop outside in the neighborhood, sit on the stoops, and the guy would say, sing a song. And I would sing a song, and I could take people on a 3-minute trip that, for instance, let me give you an idea. Here I am, girl, standing in the rain, going round inside a hurricane, baby. I want to ride with you. And then you go, don't you understand exactly how I feel? My mind feels like it ain't got no driving wheel, baby. I want to ride with you. And then you say, you know, and then the last verse would be, you know, everybody's got to make a change sometime. My heart has turned towards the sunshine, baby. You know, it's like in the 3 minutes, you could take people through a hurricane, you're going through turmoil, and then you come out on the other side, oh, the light, oh, I'm peaceful. You know, so you could take them on, it's like a 3-minute movie. So that's what we kind of applied to this book. It's 20 chapters, vignettes, and each chapter, hey, I've been on the planet a while, and through my experiences, I've learned some things. So each chapter kind of gives you a taste of transcendence and a glimpse of salvation.
Right, some of like Bronx Soul, Rebels and Causes, My Music and My Muse. I thought this was a great one, Truth Decay. I think you're hanging out with Scott Hahn too much. But of course, Mike Aquilina probably had some influence in that too,
yeah,
right?
That's Mike. But, you know, talking to him, we have great, we have a lot of fun throwing these things around. But the point is, you know, coming from, since I've embraced the church and truth, which was, well, I came to the Lord a while ago because I've been clean and sober about 43 years.
Is that around 79, do you consider that, or earlier than that?
I came into a 12-step program, which the 12 steps are based on the disciplines and teachings of St. Ignatius of Loyola. And they're designed to lead you into union with God. And you know, when I embraced one of come into recovery, because I was drinking and drugging in the 60s, I ran into my mentor or a sponsor or a friend, and he said, Dion, God designed you in such a way only to work well when you're in union with him. And these steps will lead you, will position you to receive this wonderful gift of God. And don't you know, that's exactly what those steps did for me. And it's like being hurled into the fourth dimension. It's like your worldview changes because you're home.
Right. It's interesting too because, you know, two things struck me because you talk about the idea of being a husband, dad, and grandfather in the book, and that it's all about being an Italian American, loving my heritage. It's about addictions and dealing with them, and about very few virtues and a lot of attitude. But one of the things that struck me was, you know, the fact that there was heroin use in the 50s with you. I thought would have been a surprise. I would have thought, well, drinking and those kind of maybe, you know, people taking pep pills or something. But heroin, how did you get into heroin?
Easy. Somebody grabs a bag, puts up here, says, try this, and you start snorting it, and then you start skin popping, you know, and then you mainline, and you just, you know, you're a kid on the street, so you.
And this was before you made it then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because later on then you had the money.
I was like 14.
Right, okay. So you were that young when you started.
Right.
And then by the time you were 20 or so, you were a millionaire several times over, and we're talking about money back
that's
then,
a rewrite.
Oh, is it? Okay.
That's a rewrite there. I'm thinking, you know, we were trying, sometimes you try to, we have 2 rewrites in the book, but that one, you know, eventually those things happen, but it was a little too soon here, you know, it was like, it was, but we're making big bucks.
Right.
Big bucks. You know, at that time, in the 50s, I mean, a cop or a fireman would be making $80 to $100. We were making I was making like $800 a week on tour. You know, that was a lot of money.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Right. Now, one of the things that struck me too is in the introduction you talk about kind of projecting through. You talk about, I'm one of the lucky rockers who lived long enough to learn that I was wrong, and that's a grace in itself. And you talk about the song Rock and Roll Heaven, and you list all the different people who've died, and many people today still listen to their music, you know, Joplin, Hendrix, Morrison, etc. You say it's gone a little higher since then, with lots of kids dying because they believed what the record company's PR department had said about them. What was that? And did you have that problem as well?
You know, I don't know what anybody said. You know, like there's all kinds of things said by media, by record companies, by friends, by people that don't know better, but you can't base your life on a lie. You know, the truth will set you free. What keeps you in bondage? Error. You know, like building your life on something that isn't truth. And a lot of people, you know, rockers, they love to, they pride themselves on knowing what freedom is about and what truth is about. And some of them die, a lot of them die very broken. They don't know what either one really means. When they talk about freedom, they're really talking about license. And these are some of the things I like to define in the book, because license is doing whatever you want to do.
Right.
Regardless of the consequences to your country, your family, God, yourself, your kids, your wife, and that's license. Freedom is the ability to choose God's best. And,
right.
You know,
as you say in the book, right?
Yeah, and truth. You know, it's and this is what I was saying when you embrace. See, I was in love, and that's one of the things that this book is really about, especially for my extended family. I could give them something, because I was in love with the search for truth, underlined search. But what happens when you see it or you're introduced to it, and there it is? Do you embrace it, or do you keep searching? I mean, you know, people, they're frightened of embracing it. It's challenging.
Right.
You know,
now you say this book is my new song, You're My Friends. What do you mean?
Well, you know, I feel like a lot of the people that buy my records and they, you know, they communicate. Like I have a Facebook page. I love talking to my friends out there. You know, I feel like there's kind of a communication. You know, even though it's very general, it's like a small town that I'm talking to. Like I belong to this small town, and you meet these people at the diner or the, you know, the whatever, you know, the mall, and it's just people used to. So it's like I love sharing with people. I love sharing my experience, strength, and hope with them, you know, because I'm excited about. I'm a little weird because I'm excited about recovery and learning and like I get excited. Let me explain. When I was a kid, I hated history. It had no meaning. You know, they were trying to teach me about Washington and 1776, and I'm thinking, well, what song did Hank Williams put out this week, or what's Jimmy Reed? I gotta get Jimmy Reed.
Is that the attention deficit part of your brain, you think?
No, I like the blues, and that was important to me. It was like there was a guy.
You had a focusing issue.
Well, yeah, I probably have this attention deficit disorder, but probably if they gave me pills back then, I would have never picked up the guitar and started writing.
Right.
But you know, this idea of wanting to, you know, learn a new riff on a guitar, a new song, was more important than school. Like in school, they thought I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to run out. I'm talking about junior high school. I'm looking to run home and get with Willie Green, a janitor, a black guy who used to play blues on the, and I wanted to learn a riff. And that's what my interest was. When I came to Christ through recovery and a prayer, it changed my worldview. And what happened is I went down to a Bible bookstore, I bought a Bible, and I read it. And I got interested in history, his story.
Okay, right.
And I started reading about God always had a people. And then I got interested in the early fathers of the church and the apostolic fathers.
Well, that always leads you back to the Catholic Church, so.
Why did they give their lives? Why did they give their lives? What did they believe? I wanted to know. And I always got interested. Then I got interested in history. The founding fathers of the country, the American roots music, the fathers of the blues. If it's a 12-step program, who invented this thing? What did they do? What was their path? I'd like to read about their lives. And there are books you could read about that.
Well, I was wondering, in reading through this book, did you always, and do you look back now and see God's hand at certain stages of your life? Because there's that Monsignor who kind of focused on you, and you had a certain interesting relationship with. Did that help you through the dark times?
I think that's what this book is all about. How I could see some of those things now so clearly, that it's how God works in a regular guy's life, in a musician's life. And if you have a connection and a relationship with him, he'll take you to higher ground. You'll learn through situations, circumstances, and conditions. You'll come out with something beautiful. It'll take you to higher ground.
Right.
You know?
Well, it's interesting too, because in a sense of, because of the amount of rent your parents paid, and because you have a little bit of your mother in you, $36 saved your life, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right, it did. You're talking about the chapter on, Don McLean wrote a song called The Day the Music Died. It was about Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper going down in that fatal plane crash. And that never defined the day for me, because I was on that tour. I was the only other guy in the room when we made the decision who was going to fly on that four-seater. There was a pilot, Buddy Holly, chartered the plane for the headliners, and two of us, there was only two other seats, so we had to flip a coin in the room, which I was one of the guys who won, the Big Bopper and myself. But when they said $36, I said, gee, I don't know about that, because my mind hadn't stretched out to that, to just spending $36 on a 2-hour plane trip that my parents always argued about the $36 rent every day. My father never really had a real job. You know, he was one of those guys with wonderful qualities, but he didn't like to work. And my mother was like...
He was like a puppeteer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
When he could get work?
Yeah. he sculpted.
But he did give you a love of art, because you talk about Monet as being like your idol, right?
Yeah, he gave me my father was my hero. He had wonderful qualities. Working wasn't one of them, but
Your mother filled in on that, right? Yeah.
She had an exaggerated sense of her own responsibility. Thank God, because she kept the family together. But my father had this great loved life. He had this exuberance, he would encourage the mystery and the awe and the wonder of life in me, He'd get the kids around a table, he'd put a tomato in the middle of the table, say, let's make one of those. Okay, we're gonna make a tomato. Let's get some red stuff. And we'd all run out and we'd try to make a tomato, and we found out we couldn't make a tomato. And then he'd say, okay, let's try to make a pinky. He'd just make you think.
Right.
Or bend your mind.
Try and be creative, right?
Yeah, it just made you go a little deeper and kind of.
Well, there's a quote in here too where someone said to you that, I think it's along the lines of the paraphrase, that you end up becoming the person that you, Dion, a man becomes exactly the person he wants to become.
Yeah, that chapter's about my dad, and I was walking with him around the lake down in Florida, and I said, Dad, you're coming into the sunset years of your life. I said, do you regret anything? He said, not a thing. He didn't even hesitate. He said, not a thing. A man becomes exactly who he wants to be. And I'm walking with him, and I'm thinking, that's profound. That's true. Yeah, that's good. And I'm walking, and all of a sudden it comes to me, yeah, a man becomes exactly who he wants to become according to what he knows. If he's in the other room over there and all they have is Cheetos and Diet Coke, nothing wrong with Cheetos and Diet Coke. But you say, come in here, we got a banquet, and he's going, nah, I'm happy, I'll just. He stays in the room. He never experiences that. So it was a good conversation, and I miss him.
Because he lived into his 90s? Or was he around
90s? Yeah, 93.
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Now, one of the things I wanted to touch on, because it kind of reminds me of myself in high school growing up in the 60s, was the song Imagine, because you knew John Lennon, and they talk about on page 91 about the song Imagine, which in fact our high school, Catholic high school, used as its theme to the junior show. When it sounds terrific until you read the lyrics. And you point out, of course, you say, Imagine has become an anthem for internationalism, one world government, and a favorite hymn for those who are spiritual but not religious, which was great. And you say, John was a beautiful man, but this song represents a huge failure of imagination. Why did you want to make that point?
It's like a girl came up to me once, she said, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. I said, I'm not honest, but you're interesting. It's just like, I can't imagine the 30 miners in that hole, in that cave for 30 days, and they're holding hands and singing, imagine there's no heaven, imagine there's no God, imagine there's no. You'd have to take it further. Imagine there's no sin, imagine there's no evil, imagine there's no self-centeredness, imagine there's no fear, dishonesty, inconsideration. It's trying to like bombard the problem with self-will when God does have an answer. And if you reject that, you could imagine anything, it's not gonna happen. Our imaginations aren't that big, we can't do it. But I think the song I love the song.
Right, it's a great song.
And I love John Lennon, and I write about him very affectionately because I really liked him a lot.
He's probably the reason you're actually on the Sgt. Pepper's album cover, right?
Yeah, he liked my song Ruby Baby and put the headshot on that cover on Sgt. Pepper. Yeah. I tell everybody that's why that album sold so many albums.
Because of your picture.
Of
course, right?
Yeah. I was going to tell the Beatles, you should put my head on every cover. But I just had to address that song because I tried to sing it once. I said, gee, I can't sing this. This is not, it just wasn't. It fell short for me. So I write about it.
Right, and you talk wonderfully about your wife, who's a black belt in love, from what I read here, and people will have to get the book to know all about this. And one of the things that was important is how you came back to the Catholic Church, and you actually, you talk about these Catholics took Jesus at his word, and they believed the Eucharist was his body, blood, soul, and divinity. So that, what was it about that attracted you? The honesty, the truth, the commitment, what was it?
Well, I was all over the place religiously. I was at a Christmas party with a bunch of different guys from different denominations, and we were having a discussion, and it seemed to me that after the discussion, I realized that the church is the new, there's a church opening up every week in some shopping center, and the further away you get from the church, the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, the weaker and weaker that until that the bread and the wine have absolutely no, they're just bread and wine, and it's some people, some churches maybe take communion once a year. It just it's all, the power's taken out of it. I just felt like as I started to read the early fathers and the apostolic fathers and Justin Martyr, some of these people laid their lives down for this truth.
Right, and why did you go back to your original parish when you wanted to make your commitment or recommitment?
I don't know. I just happened to be there, and it just happened. It was like
just happened to work out.
Yeah, God had me in the right place at the right time, and I just said, Father, I've been like distant from the church. I've been struggling, and I finally read myself, and I'm here to tell you I'm home.
Well,
and he got up and said, welcome home.
Well, it's great that you wandered back in. Welcome home. It's a pleasure to have you here. It's a great story and a great read. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Dion.
Don.
Speaking with the one and only Dion DiMucci, The Wanderer talks about truth and its stories, humor, and music. He wrote it along with Mike Aquilino. It's published by Servant Books. This is a must-read. Check it out through our EWTN Religious Catalog. I'm Doug Keck. Join us next time right here on EWTN's Bookmark.